Welcome to the YouTube Creators Hub podcast, where we help you conquer the internet one video at a time. We cover everything from how to start a YouTube channel to how to make a video go viral. And now, here's your host, the one and only Dusty Porter.
Hello and welcome to episode 405 of the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. You're looking for a podcast for creators, specifically YouTube content creators or video creators. This is the show for you. Each and every Friday morning, I sit down with a wonderful content creator and I talk with them about their journey as an influencer, as a content creator. We talk about the ups and downs, how they make money, the strategies they put in place to succeed, and the different ways that they've found to grow a brand on YouTube and everything in between. So if you're looking to start, grow, or monetize your YouTube channel, this is the podcast for you. The primary sponsor of this show and has been for over a decade is TubeBuddy. If you're looking for a browser plugin, the one tool, the Swiss Army knife of YouTube tools, TubeBuddy is that tool. And using our link in the show notes, you'll obviously help us out, but you'll also get a free month's trial of at least testing out TubeBuddy and see if it's a fit for your workflow and can help you take your YouTube channel to the next level. We also have a couple of other ways you can connect with us. We have a very fastly growing YouTube mentor and community over on Discord. If you support us on Patreon for $5 or more, you get access to that Discord server. We also host monthly calls on Zoom that I host myself personally, where we cover a topic and tackle something and just bounce ideas off of each other. It's a great way just to rub shoulders in a very lonely space that YouTube is. So if you're looking for other creators to ask questions to or share your most recent upload, check that out. And then I also offer professional and private YouTube coaching and consulting. I'll do YouTube channel audits. I also do the same thing for podcasting. If you're looking to get into podcasting, you can check the links out down below. This week's conversation was amazing. Faith was just so open about everything, and her channel now has over 172,000 subscribers. She's making really good money doing it full time, and she takes us through the journey of kind of the failures that she made and the things that she did that she thought early on made a difference. So if you're looking for another great conversation, this is one. So here we are. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. Dusty here, as always, joined today by Faith Womack from the How to Faith a Life YouTube channel, which as of this recording has 172,000 subscribers, almost 750 videos. So she's been doing it for a while and it's got a great community over there. Let me tell you a little bit about Faith. Faith is a Bible nerd who seeks to empower Christians on how to read and actually understand and enjoy the Bible. Through sharing what she learned in undergrad and seminary, Faith serves Christians who want more from their Bible studies, and she's taken that to her YouTube channel to great success. So Faith, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on. It's such an honor.
Absolutely. When we were talking off air, you mentioned that when you were starting or early on, you listened to the podcast. And so I get that a decent amount. And when I hear that, it just means a lot to me that successful creators like you have picked up the podcast and have used it as a tool along the way. So that's really cool to hear. Now, let's talk about the start of the How to Faith a Life YouTube channel. So go back to the beginning. What was the origin story of the channel and how did it all come to happen?
It started out me just being really lonely. We had moved out. My husband's a pastor, and so we'd moved out to a rural area, and I didn't really have any friends and was getting to know people, but just like really struggling from going from a really tight-knit community where I had a lot of friends to all of a sudden in this rural area. And I just had a lot I wanted to share and talk about that I'd learned in undergrad, and my husband and I were trying to conceive and had some miscarriages. And so I really started out talking about mom stuff and of course my faith and stuff that I'm interested, stuff I'd gotten degrees in, kept coming up. And slowly, eventually, like after probably a year of making videos, I actually discovered Bible study YouTube and this world. And it's, if anyone's not a Christian listening, they're probably like, what? There's a niche for everything on YouTube. And discovered that and leaned hard there. I was like, this is what I want. This is what I want to talk about because it has changed my life. And really just went head first into that and wasn't really sure what would come of it, but I committed myself to, I'm going to do this for at least a year. And this will just be a fun little thing I just want to try. I always wanted to learn how to edit videos. I thought it was a cool skill and very cool, like creative outlet. I was like, I'm just going to do this. And eventually got pregnant, had a baby, and I was home all day, just not twiddling my thumbs, but I had a little bit more time and just was stuck at home with a baby and had like this pent up mental energy. I'm the kind of person that always want to have some kind of project going. I'm creative, and those things give me a life. I guess I'm type A in that I want to check stuff off my list. I want to feel like I'm doing something with my life. And I think in a lot of ways, my YouTube channel saved me from like really bad postpartum depression because it gave me that creative outlet. And then I slowly started to make these stranger friends. I remember telling my husband, honey, 30 people watched my video and they're so nice. And they're saying all these wonderful things, and getting to know them by name and recognizing their little pictures pop up with their comment and stuff. That's really how it started out. And then of course, here I am, I guess almost 7 years later or more. Yeah, I guess 7 years. And it's my whole job. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, you, like I said at the top, you got 172,000 subscribers. Yeah, YouTube's interesting, like you mentioned at the top there about there being a niche for everything. Whenever I get into a new hobby, my wife says that I'm really good at getting into hobbies. Recently, I got into just reading a lot, just reading my Kindle or just something that I haven't done very much. I've always been a kind of a small reader in sense of the time consumption in my life, but I discovered that there's this whole thing on YouTube called like BookTube, where like people are going and reviewing books and doing this thing, and I just went deep into that thing, right? That's what YouTube's so good for. You get into a new thing, a new hobby, or something that interests you, and you can dive as deep as you want to go, and that's the beauty of YouTube. I love that. Now, what was the most, I would say, the most surprising thing to you? You mentioned like these people watching your videos and being so nice to you and interacting with you in the community. What were some surprising things that just took you maybe off guard early on, and maybe even now with being an influencer and a creator on YouTube?
Yeah, I think it probably would be like the community and truly getting to know people online through just comments and them giving me life advice. Maybe they're older in life or younger, or there's just so many different angles of so many different people that I've gotten to meet online. And I was raised in the South in very Christian circles. I wouldn't, like most of these people, I would never get the privilege of knowing. We would walk right past each other in the grocery store. And so I was like really early on surprised about like the doors it opened to make friends that I would never otherwise get to know. And many of these people eventually became my patrons. And now like some of them have my personal phone number and we text. Like, this has changed my life in that way. I always was more of an introvert where I'm going to pour myself into 3 friends, but then that kind of maxes me out. And I want mild, deep friendships. And I feel like the Lord really provided that. And really YouTube gave me the opportunity for that, because they're watching your life and they're responding, giving advice, writing you an email. And I think there's a lot of that, especially when you're a smaller creator. I know so many smaller creators, they want to grow big, but things actually get shallower when you get bigger. You just can't share as much. I can't share what school my kids go to. I can't share what church I'm at, just for security reasons. But that automatically sets like this distance from me and my audience. And I definitely look back and miss those days where things were smaller and I could be more vulnerable and all of that.
How do you foster and grow and nurture and all of these words? How do you do that to a community that you've grown online through YouTube? What are some tactics that you've put in place, some strategies that you've seen work for you that help you really foster this community and take them along with you as you go through like the pregnancy stuff and you're sharing your faith and all of these intimate details? How do you set the barriers and the guardrails, but still have a community that trusts you and engages with you because they feel like you're being real with them?
Yeah. Okay, so Emma Chamberlain did an interview with Colin Samir, and she mentioned something that I really resonated with. She said, I've been always the type of person where if you start to misunderstand me, I'm going to over-explain because I know my intentions. I know I'm a good person. And so I will always, she like basically said, she's always going to be vulnerable. She's always going to be really open and probably overshare with people because that's just how she's wired. And I'm very similar. I don't know if it was like the drama or whatever that shaped me in my childhood or whatever, but like, I am always the type of person, I will always overshare, be super vulnerable with people because I know I don't have necessarily anything to hide. Now, I will definitely try and protect my kids and not share like where our church is or their school. But I think people really are looking for vulnerability online. I think they want to see you be real. And I think a lot of adults are lonely. I think a lot of people go on YouTube and they want to feel like they're talking to their girlfriend or a close friend, and they want to hear your intimate thoughts about your garage organization or whatever. They want that buddy relationship. And I think we need it. And in some ways, YouTube does help meet that on the surface level, or at least start to meet those needs. I was watching a video yesterday as I was prepping dinner, and it was some girl I've never even talked to in real life, but she was just going on and on about what makeup she uses and how she hasn't gone makeup shopping in a long time. And she doesn't really care. And I was like, I have no reason to be interested in this, but I am. And it just feels like I'm not alone in the kitchen right now making dinner, but I have a girlfriend in the room with me and I'm listening to her thoughts. And it's whatever that is, whatever relational itch, if it's met.
YouTube's such a powerful tool in that it can be used for business, it can be used for personal, it can be used for entertainment. There's so many different avenues. That's why I love doing this podcast and talking to creators like you. Now, on the end of that answer, I do want to piggyback off that and go into the things that you've done, maybe early on or even now, that you think have attributed to the success of the channel. Because whether you want to admit it or not, the channel is successful, right? A lot of creators are very humble and they're like, oh, I only got this, that, whatever. Bottom line is you're in the top 4 or 5% of creators on YouTube, not just in numbers, but just like attrition, right? Most creators like fall off after year 4, after year 5, right? Because they're just not willing to put in the time and effort it takes to get to that successful point. So what are some things that you've put in place with the YouTube channel that can be technical or not that you think have attributed to the growth of the channel and the success?
So I never came from it like I have to make this a business or my life. In fact, I like doubted it more than I ever saw like it happening. But I was like, I'm at least gonna try. And posted and tried to always get a little bit better 1%. Always try and get my thumbnails a little bit tighter, my titles a little bit better, all the things. And I look back and I can see that growth it's like a ball, and how the improvement is like a ball. And while trends of thumbnails change and title trends change and all that kind of stuff does eventually evolve on YouTube, I think just the attitude of being a student like forever is something that, and like the attitude of not holding anything too tightly is something that's like so priceless on YouTube. Is you don't have to make money from this, but you're just going to be here no matter what. And you don't have to get 10,000 views, but you're going to try your best and you're going to do your best. And I think those kinds of things have always helped. I also would say too, I wasn't afraid to monetize early on. I'm not like a money-driven person. I've never been like a businesswoman or anything like that, but I did get degrees and had student debt. And I was like, it would be awesome if like these Bible studies I'm posting online could eventually pay for my student debt. At least in my theological circles, women don't typically get employed by churches in paying roles. And oftentimes they're just volunteers and such. And so I was like, this would be the perfect place to use what I've gotten degrees in anyway. And so I started a Patreon page. And I think because there was funding behind it, that also gave me more ability to spend more time, to hire editors, to pay for courses or advice and things like that. And I also have just the personal call and desire to reach people with this thing that I believe to be the truth. And I genuinely will, just out of pure passion, want to stay up till 3 a.m. editing and perfecting the intro or whatever it is. And so I think all of those combined leads to a really great, healthy environment of just wanting to do my best and staying like a student. Okay, this totally flopped. This totally failed. It didn't do how I wanted it to do. But also, look at all these comments. It reached them in a different way than really what I wanted, but maybe deeper. Right. And now I've learned all this priceless stuff I wouldn't have learned if it didn't fail. So yeah, I touched on multiple different things.
No, I love that. That's a great answer. And I want to follow that up with, like, how did you get through the tough times? The times when early on you were thinking, is anyone watching? Does it matter? Was it, you obviously have a great attitude about, hey, I'm not doing this for the monetary reasons. I'm not doing this for any other reason than I have a message and I want it heard, and YouTube is that tool or vehicle to get me there. But certainly there were times when you thought to yourself, could I not get better return on my time somewhere else? We've all been there. I'll be honest with you. There's times with my YouTube channel, even recently with it doing well, where I've thought to myself, what can I do to get to that next level? Or am I putting my time where it needs to be? So how did you get through those difficulties?
To be completely honest, I think it helps that I have faith in someone that is the creator and sustainer, sovereign over everything. And so I get to just be like, okay, so that wasn't meant to blow up. And I believe God's in control of algorithms or even comments when they go sour. And my value isn't placed in those things. And so I can just lay my head at night knowing like I'm on this journey, just trusting the Lord. And if he won't, the Bible uses this imagery of a clay pot. And I think this is adaptable to anybody, no matter what faith you have. But if I'm just that clay pot in his hands, even if he crumbles it up, I'm still in his hands, right? Even if he shapes it weird, how I don't want to be shaped, I'm still in his hands. And there's nothing that can like take that away. Right. I'm not like, it's not like my safety's lying on this doing well or anything like that. I just have this security that's not placed on performance and things like that. And so I think that helps. But I also would say at the end of the day, I am the type of person that's going to give my 100%. And so when things didn't go well, at least I knew I tried my best. And all of this, obviously that's like relative. I was like, how do you know you've tried your best? You know, there's always a pushback there, but relatively speaking, like realistically, I did my best. And I gave it my all and I gave it my heart. And if that didn't sit and resonate with people, then it will eventually in a different form or a different way. But at least I did my best. I think a lot of people, especially like nowadays, since 2020, really now that we're thick into 2024. And I think a lot of people have this idea about influencers and you either grow, boom, and it's super easy, or it's just like handed to you on a silver platter, or it's like not cut out for them. And so they like try for a month and then they quit when it doesn't go easy. And I'm the type of person I was plowing for years and years and still am in a lot of ways. It still feels like I'm trudging through mud and I'm okay with that. Like, I actually want to live my life like that. I want to die tired. And I always tell people that and people, whatever, but not like in a pick me kind of way or pat myself on the back. But like, I don't know. I've been given this life and I want to pull the all-nighters if I can. I want to give my best because I don't want to die having like anything left in the tank. I want to give like my all. And so if YouTube's the best way to reach the most amount of people and to serve the most amount of people, then let me give my all there. And like, obviously my home life, my kids, my marriage, all those things are super important to me as well. But I think like people don't realize like that's like 10,000 souls. Like that's like 10,000 brains, or even if it's just 10,000 or if it's like 100, like that's 100 people. You couldn't have talked to that many people in the grocery store today. That's so many people just with like one 5-minute video or one 15-minute video, whatever. Might as well make it like pretty good. Like give like as much as you possibly can to it. And so I'm not a perfectionist by any means, but I am pretty passionate about like trying to do my best because this is my legacy and it's going to outlive me probably. So.
Hey guys, a quick pause in the interview this week to talk about my new weekly newsletter called the Entrepreneur's Minute. My plan for the newsletter is to only send out one email every week with a recap of what's going on in my business, maybe do an income report letting you know how much money I've made that week or that specific month, an update on my YouTube channel, and just a behind-the-scenes look of what it takes to be a creator, the books that I'm reading, the products I'm discovering, new AI tools and resources. So if you're just looking for a way to better connect with me, Dusty, and see what I got going on, and the different things that I want to write about each week, maybe it's my family, maybe it's my business, it's absolutely free. It's called the Entrepreneur's Minute, and I would really appreciate it. All right, now back to the show.
Sometimes we do lose the perspective of the power of the numbers on YouTube, whether it's 50 people, 50,000 people. My channel some days gets 40, 50, 60,000 views daily, and that's a lot of eyeballs. I remember early on, I was going to school to be a teacher. My wife's a teacher in education, and a little discouraged. I had a job out of college and then got let go due to economic reasons and just that company dissolving. And I realized I was like, I don't know if I want to be in a classroom. I heard all the horror stories from my wife, and someone told me, it might have been somebody in my family mentioned to me or close to me, said, hey, you're getting thousands and thousands of people that you're teaching online every day anyway. So you're just getting to do the teaching just in a different avenue or a different platform. And so thinking of it that way sometimes puts it a little more in perspective. Let's talk about the technical side of things for what you do now. You talked about like you wanted to get good at editing. You wanted to get better and more efficient. Talk about the video production process for you, how it's evolved over time, and just from start to finish, like from ideation to publish and post-publish. What are you doing for your videos?
I've learned, I've been trying to lean more into like when I get a good idea, oftentimes it's 3 all in the same hour. I get 3 really good ideas and I'm super excited to film them all. And I need to jump on that and do that, or else I'll eventually talk myself out of those ideas or lose the passion for them. And so that's the part of us being creative people, is we have to lean into that, and stuff comes in waves. And you don't want to just, I don't know, I've learned like almost sometimes pacing myself isn't always great with the creative stuff, because you want to lean into those creative waves, because there will be a dry period and you want to have those videos built up and stored up, ready to edit and stuff. So I'll film in batches. Last week I filmed for just YouTube channel videos. I filmed probably 3 videos, I think, or 4. And then this week I don't even want to talk to a camera. That's just life, right? Might be hormones too. I don't know, but that's life. And so I'll film, I send them off to an editor guy, and he does like the first cuts. I film on 2 different cameras. That's just like where I've evolved. I might add a 3rd coming up soon, but a lot of my content is like talking head with also like B-roll on my hands, doing something in my Bible or writing down something or showing something in a book or a resource. And so right now I have 2 cameras, and that's what works really well, but I'm still spending a lot of time like moving the tripod, changing the camera angle and all of that. And so I might even still bring in a 3rd. It's just that gets complicated too, because it's more memory cards to keep track of. And golly, naming memory cards, like, why don't they make them where you can like label them better? Like that's a whole thing. I should just make my own product, but whatever. So yeah, I'll send all that through just like Google Drive to an editor I found on Upwork, and he's very like-minded, really easy to work with. I try and pay the people who edit for me like well above minimum wage, or like where it's worth it, so that when I send them footage at 9 p.m. and ask for it like within 24 hours, I don't necessarily feel super bad, because they're like, yes, I want to work for you because I get paid so good. And so I send that to him. He does first rounds of edits and gives me back like a rough draft of sorts. And then I go through and I add the pop-ups, the zoom ins, the personality to the edit, and the final touches. And with what I do, there's like a lot of teaching, and you want to teach stuff that's correct. And with theology, quickly can get into heresy and stuff like that. And so I'm like really fine-tooth combing through that, but he saves me probably, I used to spend probably 12 hours on a video, and now I spend probably half that. Sometimes it's even as low as 3-4 hours, just depending on the type of content that it is. That's the process. And then typically I already have a rough idea of the thumbnail, but as I'm editing the video, I kind of fine tooth that. And like, I spent so much time on this, I should probably mention this in the title or the thumbnail, just again, because of the nature of the content that I make. But I try and typically have a title and a thumbnail picked out, and then that kind of evolves with the process of the video. And throw it up on YouTube and hope that it sticks.
Do you design your own thumbnails?
Yeah, just on Canva.
Yeah, sure.
I don't spend that much time on them. I really honestly want to get more passionate about thumbnails. But right now I don't like YouTube. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like YouTube right now on thumbnails is so divided. Like each niche has their own style to thumbnails.
Yeah.
And some of them are like stuck in 2005. And then some of them are like very 2010s era. And then some of them are like, I don't even know what this is. Maybe it's 2020s, but like everybody has their own style, and it's weird. Back in the day though, it was like everybody made thumbnails this certain way, with a white outline around them. And it's just not that way.
I think that it's like anything else, right? It's all about trends and what's working for the people at the top, and it just trickles down, right? So whatever Mr. Beast or Casey Neistat or any of these really high-end creators that are getting a lot of views, whatever they're doing in testing, that's what most people are going to. It went through a trend where people thought to themselves, I have to put my face in my thumbnail. It's got to be really big and bold. It's got to have the outline around, just what you were talking about. And I think that now we're seeing that there's other trends coming in. There's like the comparison thumbnails of the $0 versus the $100. There's the all of these things that are trending. And I think you have to find what works for your brand, what works for your channel. And it oftentimes may not be the most popular thing. It just is what's working for your niche and your space. And I think that the only really trap you can get in is just not evolving and not trying to get better with everyone that you do, like with anything on YouTube. So I appreciate you walking us through that. It's interesting you say that you hired an editor. How early on in the process of the channel did you do that?
I had 2 now, both happen to be males. One was international, and so it got hard sometimes to communicate things, but eventually sometimes I have to take back on the editing because I will lose I feel like creative power, creative interest. And if I go back to square one and just like start editing everything myself, it gives that back to me and it like feeds me sometimes. But I go through cycles. That's just creativity, I think. But I think it was like 3-4 years in, I got into it. And I think we did it by video then. I would pay them $100 per video.
Sure.
And now I do it hourly because videos are so different on my channel. One might take 3 hours, another might take 10.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just on Upwork. I really like Upwork. I don't know why I don't like Fiverr. I can't remember, but
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go about doing it. Upwork, a lot of ways that I found people recently. A guy on my team that helps me with I have a podcast production kind of studio here where I edit podcasts for people, and the guy that edits for me works for me. I found him on LinkedIn. So it's just, it's one of the things to where it's just like, hey, you can find people. I found people to do work for me and my YouTube channel, some research for the podcast, on a comment section of a video of mine. I found him, went to his channel. He didn't have anything. I've somehow tracked down the way to get in touch with him on social, and he's still doing some kind of back end data stuff for me for the podcast. So you can find people anywhere and everywhere. It's just the ability to, it takes time with anything. It's a lot of effort and a lot of back and forth, and that's the process. Let's talk about monetization, because you did mention that you are monetized, you are making money. This is what you're doing for a living now. What are your monetization buckets, and like, how do you make money? And if you could give us, like, obviously not exact numbers, but maybe just like a ballpark of maybe what you do in a month or a day or whatever you'd like to do.
So the main bucket or whatever of income is through Patreon. And I started that super early on. I want to say I probably had like 10,000 subscribers, might have even been more like 5. I really don't know. But I started that super early on. I was just like, hey, if this comes into anything, I won't regret having started. And at the time, we were like super penny pitching on like a associate pastor salary. Like, we could use any kind of help. And that started, and it was super successful. Just right off the bat, I think like day one, I got like 10 people join, and I was like, this is life changing. We can actually fill up our entire tank in our car with gas,
And
whatever it is.
if I can ask a follow-up just to that point there, the 10 people, like, when you say they signed up for your Patreon, what was the price they were joining at? Was it like a $5 tier, a $25 tier? I see that you have multiple tiers, and people who know Patreon know how this works, fan funding. And that's the beauty of you having such a great community on your channel, is that it shows here on Patreon that you've got over 4,000 members. Now, some of those might be free, obviously, but a lot of those are paid. When you got those first 10 members, did you calculate in your head, oh my goodness, that's like over $100 that I just made each month? Give us the feedback of that.
I remember very clearly it was $53. And I ran into the kitchen and I was crying because I said, we can get groceries. We have some food allergies that really make our groceries really expensive. And I was just so grateful for that. Was like I think it was like 2 weeks, our budget for 2 weeks of groceries at the time. And there's like so many stories, but rice and beans were what carried us through some rough months. And so I think it was $53. I think it was like about 10 people. Maybe it was like 9 or 8. And that was life changing. But yeah, so now I've always had actually 3 tiers. It's a $5 tier, a $12 tier, and a $25 tier. And I try and give them like as much as I possibly can there on Patreon, because they have changed the game for me. That's how I can employ editors and people to help me with emails and stuff like that, is because of Patreon, and give to other ministries and things like that. And I give them a vlog every week, and typically it's like 2 Bible studies every week, and we go live and we do all different kinds of studies and stuff. And I just try and give them like more content than they can even possibly consume, because I just want to make it super worth it for them.
Yeah. And so you have the Patreon, plus I assume the ad revenue on YouTube. How is monetizing faith-based content? I haven't talked to a faith-based creator in a long time. Early on in the show, I had a couple on the podcast, and back then it was fine. There was not a problem with doing any of that kind of thing. So I would assume you don't run into too much trouble trying to monetize the faith-based stuff, do you?
No, and I'm sure one day that will happen. And just to be super real, there's not much there. I remember when I made like $1 in a month, and I was like, whoa, but that was like when I was getting like 30 minutes of video. I'm trying to think. It's probably 10% of what my business brings in a month. So that doesn't even cover like employees or anything, but it's still nice. It's still just like icing on the cake. I don't monetize Instagram and TikTok, and those actually have, I think, more followers than YouTube. But I know a lot of people have expectations there as well. I would just say, like, when you put out content, don't necessarily assume that like, the views will pay the bills, but rather those views should lead them to something that might.
Yeah, I know that the Patreon for me for the podcast was something that I realized that I never had a problem, even from like year 3 or 4, getting sponsors on the show. But the thing that I wanted was I wanted something that I owned, that I knew that every month I had now, it was going to ebb and flow just from the nature of it. But the Patreon for my podcast gives people for $5, they get a mastermind group of creators, and I facilitate that through the podcast. And I only make $400, $500, $600 a month, so it's not like I'm getting rich off of it, but it's that I own, right? Like but I can control that, and I've formed some friendships and some relationships through that, and giving them value really, and that Patreon has really grown over the past 6 to 8 months, and I can see it continue to do so. So I love that. I love that you're talking about that. And I also would assume when you're doing faith-based content, it's like anything, right? Like the amount you're making per 1,000 views is a lot different than me on my channel because I cover technology tutorials. So for me, those companies are paying a lot more than, say, like a Bible company or a company that does like a Christian camp or something of that nature. So it's good. It's going to just differ depending on the niche that you're in. So I appreciate you being so transparent. Now, you mentioned like emails and things like that. Are there other things that you've done outside of YouTube that obviously YouTube's the main cog in the wheel, but are there any other buckets per se, as the analogy that I like to use, like affiliates or selling products? Like what else do you do?
Yeah, so then I have this whole slew of digital products, and I use Samcart for that. It's okay, but I sell courses and a Bible reading plan, and these things I call like the Cliff Notes to the Bible. They summarize each book of the Bible and give people like tips on how to study it and stuff. Basically helping people go deeper in their Bible studies. And that's, again, where I spend most of my time, is building those out and just giving as much possible value as possible to the people who buy it, because I don't take it for granted. I'm well aware that they can go listen to a free sermon online. And so if they're going to put their money behind me and like really want to learn from me, then I'm going to study more than a pastor does for his sermons. You know, like I'm going to give it my best.
I talk a lot about email newsletters on this podcast. You do a great job. As I was doing research for this show, one of your pages linked from your YouTube channel is your email newsletter, where basically you say, send me the Bible study. So they give you their email address, you send them a free Bible study, and you go ahead and get them in your ecosystem. That's a perfect, what I call call to action that you've done there to get them in. Your audience, you know what they want, and so you give them something for free, or the freebie is what I like to call it, and it gets them in the system. How many, if you don't mind sharing, like how large is your email list now? Because that's a very powerful thing.
I believe it's just under 30,000 people on there.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's a really powerful thing. And you own that, right? Like you pay ConvertKit or whatever you use to be able to have these emails that go out weekly or biweekly or monthly or whatever it is. And that's powerful. I want creators that listen to this to know that Faith took her niche and her space, knew her audience. Last week, I talked to a crafter. She called her target person Phyllis. It doesn't matter what you want to call your target person, right? Just knowing them will help you to facilitate the things like the email newsletter. All right, as we're getting a little bit long here, I want to ask you, in conclusion, what's next for the channel? Like what the How to Faith the Life channel and brand, what is next for you short-term and long-term? What do you have planned?
We're working on building out physical products in the next year or so. So that's really exciting, but it's new ground for me. I just think diversifying and really just honestly meeting my audience where they want to be met. They're always asking for references to specific tools to use in their Bible studies and stuff like that. And why not just do that myself? I had so many brands ripping me off or using me to plug their stuff. And I finally realized, like, I don't even like it that much. I'd rather just build something that's perfect. I actually do this. I know what's needed. And so that's what we're working on, and we'll see what comes from it. I'm obviously like super nervous because digital products are so easy.
They are.
There's no upfront cost basically other than the software. But so yeah, that's the big thing for me. And also just making it sustainable, because like I said, like I mentioned multiple times, I'm so passionate about like, giving it my all and doing my best. And that means I'm burning the candle from both ends most days. And then also trying to be present with my boys when I close off my computer, and be present in my marriage and all the things, and, you know, serve elsewhere. And so I think finding balance to make it sustainable, it's something I can do until retirement, is like always my passion. It's something I'm constantly thinking through, praying through, etc. So those are my big two focuses.
I love that. And Faith, I'm so thankful that you were willing to come on this podcast today. It's so nice to chat with you. You have so much knowledge, a breadth of knowledge to share. And I cannot wait to maybe have you on in a couple of years, a follow-up episode where we talk about those physical products. But thank you again. All of Faith's links will be, her website, YouTube channel, everything will be in the link in the show notes of this episode. But we really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to this week's episode of the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the show for absolutely free in your podcast player of choice. Also, there are ways you can connect with us. You can support us by supporting our sponsor, TubeBuddy, as well as supporting us over on Patreon to get access to our creator Discord community. And I also offer YouTube coaching and consultation, YouTube channel reviews, and just overall business coaching if that's something that you are wanting to look into. So make sure you check us out there, and we'll see you next week.